Call the meeting to order. This is the April meeting of the Black Mountain Board of Aldermen. This time I'd like to welcome everyone, and also if you would, please turn off your cell phones and your beepers. This time we'll stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance, and then Reverend David Rayburn will come and do our invocation. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing as Reverend Rayburn from the First Baptist Church does our invocation.
Let's pray. Gracious God, we thank you for our town and our community and for these leaders that serve us. We ask that you provide them wisdom in the decisions that they make so that we may live together in harmony and prosperity and in care for one another. Amen.
Reverend Rayburn, would you like to give us the highlights of the homeless shelter? I know it's over now. I hope it's over for this past winter.
It is. I'd like to thank the town, the community, for participation and the great generosity that has made this possible. Because of your gifts to the Swananoa Valley Christian Ministry, the shelter now has a shower that has been very beneficial. Bill Hamby and Brian Watson have been very instrumental in getting that done. We also have laundry facilities so that they can get clean clothes and those kind of things. The shelter went very well this year, particularly with the involvement of the way the food went this year, having a church take a full week to provide food, and we are always in need of and welcome new participants and new involvement as far as shelter workers. So thank you for that.
Thank you. We do have some modifications of the agenda. On under 7, under new business, request to form a board-appointed, that should be a board-appointed debt reduction committee. On under B, under the motion, added to that motion is to approve the attached schematic design plans dated March 15, 2012 as prepared by Fisher Architects. That will also be a part of that motion. If there's no objection, the agenda will stand as stated. This time we have a proclamation to read. Declaring April 14th to April 28th, 2012 as Spring Litter Sweep 2012. Whereas the North Carolina Department of Transportation organizes an annual spring statewide roadside cleanup to ensure clean and beautiful roads in North Carolina. Whereas the Spring 2012 Litter Sweep roadside cleanup will take place April 14th through April 28th, 2012. And whereas Adopt a Highway volunteers, Department of Transportation employees, Department of Correction inmates, and community service workers, local government agencies, community leaders, civic and community organizations, businesses, churches, schools, and environmentally concerned citizens conduct an annual local cleanups during Litter Sweep. And whereas this year, the town of Black Mountain will observe the annual spring cleanup on Saturday, April 28, 2012. Therefore, I, Carl Bartley, Mayor of the town of Black Mountain, do hereby proclaim April 14th through April 28th as spring litter sweep time in our town, and encourage all citizens to take an active role by participating in making our community cleaner and more beautiful. Everyone will gather at the Old Town Hall site on 102 Montreat Road, pick up orange bags, recycle bags, safety vests, and gloves, or you can pick up supplies at the Town Hall here at 160 Midland Avenue and do some of your own street spring cleaning. And just leave the filled orange bags along the roadside for the pickup. We certainly thank those that are involved and will be involved. I don't have the citizen comment sheet. I know Bob Gunn has that. Bob, would you like to come on up and speak?
Yeah, thank you. I want to sign up here. I'm Bob Gunn. I live at 109 Pleasant Drive. A couple observations. Dissent is essential to a healthy democracy. Freedom of speech is guaranteed by our First Amendment is also essential. And I'm here tonight to exercise a little bit of both. We had an election here 5 months ago. It was the largest voter turnout in town history. We had some new aldermen elected. We had one incumbent return to office. Don Collins, one of the new aldermen, was the top vote getter in every precinct. The citizens of Black Mountain exercised their democratic right to vote and spoke loud and clear. The very first full alderman meeting of the new board in January, after having been sworn in December, was marked by a lot of criticism and dissent and just jumping right in on the backs of the newly sworn in Board of Aldermen. This has continued in this room and elsewhere on a regular basis. I have been disappointed that the new board was subject to so much criticism immediately without having a chance to demonstrate the directions they wanted to go and how they wanted to do it very fully. The criticism began immediately. And I think that's unfortunate and unfair. And I think it's counterproductive, and I think it's made it difficult for this board to make the best use of their time for the benefit of everybody who lives in Black Mountain. I'll have to confess, I myself have been guilty of an occasional intemperate comment. And for that, I would like to apologize to each and every person that could have been offended, probably was offended by my intemperance. And I'll try to do better. But I would just hope that from now on, the people of this town, while exercising the necessary dissent and exercising their right of free speech, would do it with a certain amount of temperance and consideration. These people up here are serving us. They are not constitutional lawyers. They should not and cannot be expected to know every legal aspect of everything they consider. So let's give them a break and give them a chance to do the job that we elected them for. And thank you very much for the time. And I have to leave now to go to another meeting, and I hope I'm not followed out by a mob in the parking lot.
Next one, Ruth Brennan.
I'm Ruth Brandon, 722 Laurel Avenue. First, I was happy to see all the positives about the golf course and the local newspaper and the positive letter from a member of the Women's Golf Association. That's a very pleasant change from the negative remarks we've been hearing, but I was very happy to read that in the paper. Thank you, Mark. For the benefit of those of you here tonight, and for those of you in our TV audience, as well as those people I meet in the grocery store or at the post office or on the street, those who have come to my shop, even at church, who asked me about our former town manager, Marcy O'Neill, I bring you good news, all of you folks, that she has now been hired by our neighbor to the west, the town of Waynesville, population of approximately 12,000 people compared to Black Mountain's 7,500 people. She will have well over 200 employees, again compared to Black Mountain's 70. Well, actually 79 since a former part-time employee was rehired. Their recreation department alone, I believe, has almost as many employees as our entire town force. Marcy will, of course, rise to this challenge because she is, as Waynesville has already described her, and I quote, a very smart person. Granted, not all of our town managers have come to us as fully credentialed as Marcy, who was, for a starter, a former Moorhead Scholar, to say nothing of her professional qualifications for town manager. Waynesville has a governing board of 5 members, which numbers include the mayor, who votes with the board. Their mayor is a great cheerleader for his town. I'm sure many of you read or you heard about his outgoing personality, how he often goes downtown shaking hands and greeting the townspeople and greeting the tourists and making them feel proud of their town. I'm sure Marcy is feeling very, very good about her relationship with her new mayor, because it's very important to have a good and a solid working relationship with your mayor. Their former town manager has just retired after 20 years with them. I understand their chamber is already planning a big welcoming party for Marcy. I think probably May, so some of you might want to attend. Again, I felt I owed it to all of you who have been contacting me about Marcy to let you know what a wonderful opportunity she now has. Goodbye to Marcy. You will be missed. You are missed. Thank you.
Thank you. Elaine Lutzenheiser.
I'll take mine later. Thank you.
Tom Gill.
Mayor and Board, I'd like to take this opportunity to give you a status report, just very briefly, about what's going on with the Town Square Steering Committee. Subsequent to this board's adoption of the concept plan presented at the meeting of February 13, 2012, the steering committee has secured the services of Sims and Steele Consulting to assist with the fundraising portion of the project. At this time, we are in the process of forming a campaign planning committee that will provide oversight in the fundraising process. Initial construction estimates, along with an ongoing site improvement fund and fundraising costs, place the estimated amount necessary to complete the project at $1,500,000. To date, just over $19,750 has been received in cash and checks. Ongoing site improvements after the property is developed will be covered by an endowment fund of $500,000, which currently has a restricted trust of $243,000 set aside for that purpose. Development of the town square will begin when sufficient funds are in place to complete what has been started. The work being done on the site at this time is progressing well. These safety improvements were approved by this board in January and are part of the recommendations outlined in the intersection realignment study adopted by the board on October 13, 2011. As part of that study, the consultants, quote, strongly recommend that no direct vehicular access to the town square site be permitted from US 70 or NC 9. All access should be via Honeycutt Street for public safety traffic or West Street for town square traffic. Driveway access along NC 9 or US 70 introduces conflicts that increase crash potential and interferes with traffic flow, end quote. The work being done now will block existing driveways on the west end of the property that open to State Street and Montreat Road. Another part of the work being done is an initial grading of the west end of the property and seeding that area with grass. We anticipate that by summer, residents and visitors alike will be able to enjoy the beautiful views of downtown and the mountains beyond as they begin to use this new open space in the center of town. Are there any questions?
Yes, I have one. Tom, can you explain where you guys are going to be, as far as the Town Square Steering Committee is going to be picking up as far as the development of the park? And at what point is all the money that is going to take the development funds that explain to us where that money's going to come from. I know you read it, but that's not coming from any town monies.
That is correct. That is correct. We intend to raise through fundraising processes the entire amount to develop the property, plus an endowment of $500,000 if possible to take care of ongoing improvements of the site, as well as cover the fundraising costs.
Can you explain to us also some of the things that I know that y'all have done as far as the steering committee, as far as the cost and what we're doing up there now? I know we voted in January to do it, and it voted on earlier in 2011, but we ran into a little problem with the wall.
Correct.
Can you explain to the folks who is paying for that?
The Town Square Steering Committee. Funds have been raised already that is covering the cost of the additional equipment that had to be rented,
Right.
and also for seeding the lawn, because there is no grass seed that the public service departments have. So we're paying for all of that as well.
Just wanted to make sure that everybody understands that. The town paid to get started and take up the asphalt. And I'd like to thank Mr. Watson because he's received a lot of the asphalt and has not charged the town anything for that. So we're gracious for that benefit. And but is when we ran into the problem as far as having something to break the wall, we need to rent another piece of equipment, and this Town Square Steering Committee is picking up that cost. They're also picking up the cost for the grass seed. And from here on out, after this first little initial phase is done, they are at the helm.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom, I just wanted to say thank you to you and then also to Jesse for the, we had a frog strangler of a rainstorm, and yet the fence down on the sidewalk and the deep hole that was dug in anticipation of a possible rain like that kept any dirt from leaving that property and getting onto the road. So that was good thinking on your part.
Well, that was not me. That was Jamie and the crew at Public Services. Those guys are doing a tremendous job over there. And they thought that whole process through in anticipation of the frog strangler that we had. So
well, that's congratulations to
them.
Jamie then too.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Phil Bessesi?
Bill Bessesi, 15 Highview Drive. I put down I wanted to talk tonight about Town Square and also about Grow, Western North Carolina. Town Square, I have a firm belief that it would be better developed with as much possible public space and not put parking on Town Square. Parking can be on adjacent streets or in the dry cleaner's shop across the way, or possibly develop that other little gas station building into something else. But we need to consider Town Square as just a hub and consider what else can be done across the street from Town Square. And I think that would reduce the town's cost of developing Town Square if we'd have more open grassy areas and put the parking somewhere else. Grow Western North Carolina is a source of new ideas. A bunch of radicals with 1.6 million of HUD money trying to get back to basics. They come up with a lot of good ideas. My company, at my personal expense, is collaborating in that, so we're listed. But I had asked, when I learned what good ideas were coming out of this, that we, as a town, join. And I was told there would be a representative from Grow to explain that process to you tonight. Is that true?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Under the consent agenda, we have the adoption of the minutes from March the 8th for a budget workshop, agenda work session on March 8th, also a closed session. Then on March 12th, a regular session, a special call meeting on the 3rd, and a closed session on the 3rd. Under B, proposal to approve the Garden Trail Grant project closeout. This is approve the closeout reports on this project. Had total expenditures of $93,750. Grant was received for $75,000. The town contributed $18,750. It completed in 2011. Next is a proposal to approve Lake Tomahawk stormwater management and flood mitigation project closeout. We had total expenditures of $383,970. A loan was received for $383,970 with half forgiven. Project was completed June the 9th, 2010.
I'd like to pull that one off, so I'm ask a few questions on it, please.
Okay. The next is a Lake Tomahawk Park PARTF project closeout. To approve closeout reports for the Lake Tomahawk Park renovations. The project had total expenditures of $995,620.14. The loan was received for $500,000. The grant was received for $495,620.14. The project was completed July 11th, 2011. Budget amendment. Town of Black Mountain received $5,048.19 in insurance settlement for damages to the fire training facility. Loudermilk Church and Company LLPs have performed the audit of the town's financial statements for the last 5 years. The Local Government Commission recommends rotation of audit firms at least every 5 years. The Finance Director has reviewed 5 responses to the RFP for audit services and recommends Gould Kagan CPA Group out of Asheville. Next is call for a public hearing in regard to text amendment on the planning board, text amendment to section 1.7.2. Brief summary, the planning board spent the past year reviewing the newly adopted land use code with the goal of improving the town's land use regulations by clarifying ambiguous language, amending adopted text to correct for errors or omissions, and to address previously unanticipated circumstances with the code when it was first adopted. At the July 2011 meeting, Planning Board voted unanimously to recommend the attached correct text amendments and consistency statement to be adopted by the town board. Is there a motion to approve these consent items?
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Move C to D on new business. No, I guess that'd be under unfinished business if you want to. Under A, be A under it. Next item is, oh, did we vote on that? Everybody said aye, didn't it? Okay. Request former board appointed debt reduction committee. Alderman Don Collins, would you like to address this?
Yes, sir. With the board's permission, I'd like to form a debt reduction committee, and that's a committee that will be looking at different ways in which we can reduce the town's debt through refinancing, for an example, through a possible room tax. There's a lot of things, if we think outside the box, that we can probably come up with to help in that mission. And I'd like to nominate Ryan Stone to be the chair of that. He will select folks to be on that committee and come back to the board for their approval. And with the understanding that the board has to approve anything that they come up with, and we will be giving them areas that we want them to take a look at. And I'd like to make the motion that we do that.
You've heard the motion. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Let's go back to the annual reporting zone of Board of Adjustments. Ray Lamb, Chair.
I'm Ray Lamb, Chairman of the Board of Adjustment. The current Board of Adjustment consists of 8 members, 5 regular members and 3 alternate members. In July 2011, the board elected me the chair, Terry McCall vice chair, and Elaine Lotzenhauser secretary. Each member is responsible for becoming familiar with the North Carolina General Statute, which mandates the Zoning Board of Adjustments and its procedures. Each member is also responsible for becoming familiar with the Board of Adjustment Rules of Procedure. Town Attorney Ronald Sneed, advisor to the board, holds informational and educational meetings for the board as he deems necessary. The Zoning Board heard 2 appeals within the past year. The first case was heard on August 18, 2011, and the second case was March 15, 2012. In each case, the board upheld the zoning administrator's decision. A hearing before the Zoning Board of Adjustment is quasi-judicial in that the board functions much like a court of law. Witnesses appearing before the board will take an oath and be held accountable. The purpose of the evidentiary hearing is to gather facts, not to solicit citizen opinions. The board is responsible for 2 things: to determine the facts of the case and to apply the standards within the ordinance to those facts. Meetings of the Zoning Board of Adjustment are held on the 3rd Thursday of each month at 6 p.m. in the Town Hall Board meeting. Any questions?
Question? We certainly thank you for your chairmanship and for the work you guys do on that. Thank you. Grove, Western North Carolina presentation. Carrie Runser Turner. I didn't see Joe. Is he here, Carrie?
He's not.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. My name's Carrie Runtzer Turner. I'm a senior planner at Land of Sky Regional Council. And my executive director, Joe McKinney, sends his regards. He was planning to be here but had to be in Raleigh today, so he just got me. I'm here to tell you a little bit more about Grow WNC, which is a regional project that we're managing at Land of Sky. I think you got a couple of handouts about it. I just have a quick presentation that gives you an overview about the project, and then I can answer your questions about it if you have any. You can hit it a couple times. There's a little bit of animation on this first page, sorry. So I'll just give you a quick overview about the project and then tell you some more about our process. So this project is funded by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and it is a process through which we're going to create a regional vision and develop strategies for economic prosperity, quality growth, and sustainable development. And we are going to do that through a process of pulling together a lot of the existing planning that's already been done in the region. Y'all are probably aware that there are a lot of comprehensive plans at the local level as well as regional plans, most of them focused on specific topics like transportation plans at the regional level. And what we're trying to do is really pull all of that stuff together across the region and see what kind of common goals and strategies we can pull out of that. So we're going to pull together all of those existing plans and strategies as well as some pretty extensive public involvement to develop some strategies that are across these interrelated issues that are represented by all those little bubbles up there. Land use, energy, natural and cultural resources, health, housing, transportation, economic development, all of those things and how they work together. This work is being completed by a consortium of local governments, economic development entities, nonprofits, businesses, and others that are helping us to guide the process, and they're participating on the work groups that have been meeting and are part of our steering committee, which I'll talk about in just a moment. The project itself is in the 5-county region of Western North Carolina, so that's Buncombe, Haywood, Henderson, Madison, and Transylvania counties. Typically, Land of Sky just works with the 4 counties of Buncombe, Henderson, Madison, and Transylvania. But in this case, Haywood is part of this group as well, because a lot of what we're looking at is transportation related, and Haywood County is really part of our transportation planning area. And the goal is to work together on creating our future, so you can proceed. And this has a little bit of animation too. So again, just to show you those focus areas: jobs and economic development, housing, transportation, land use, energy, resources, and health. So some of the goals of the project are to gather a lot of community input on existing plans and strategies. We've got a consultant team that is doing some analysis for us on some of the common ground across all the different plans in the region. We're also going to be getting public input on some of what the data tells us about future scenarios and existing strategies for the future. We're going to be trying to ensure that planning across these subject areas is integrated and that we can seek some implementation opportunities throughout. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. And we're trying to develop a living document as part of this process. Some of the project outcomes include a regional plan that is really going to be a platform for elevating some of your local needs, which, as you know from seeking funding opportunities, can be really important that you're recognized in any kind of planning process. It's also going to give us a coordinated vision to try to accomplish some things that we can do more effectively together than we can separately. I think we've seen a few examples recently of big economic development projects like new breweries coming to the region where it's been a multi-partner process that's done that. We're also going to try to coordinate planning across these subject areas so we can achieve more with less. I think you all know the limitations in terms of resources. We can identify many more needs than we have funding for, and so we hope this is going to be a way to make some more effective and more efficient decisions. And this also positions the region well for future funding opportunities. Participants in the process qualify for preferred sustainability status, which gives applicants extra points on grant applications to certain federal funding programs. And we have a list of those available on our website. Basically, it just kind of makes you more competitive when you're trying to get some of those grant funds. Next slide, please. It should keep going. There we go. So some of the products that will come out of this process, I mentioned that we're going to be pulling together a lot of plans and also a lot of data, and we're working with our consultant team as well as the National Environmental Modeling and Climate Analysis Center at UNCA to pull together data and look at what that says about our future. We have this consortium that we're bringing together that's going to develop a lot of partnerships. We have some communication tools that we're developing. We are conducting an impediments to fair housing analysis, which is a report that should be available fairly soon. And as I mentioned, that set of regional and local strategies. Next slide, please. So I'll just talk briefly about our project team. We have all these different subject areas that we're looking at. So we have a multidisciplinary team. It's led by the consultant team of land design, but also includes other consultants that have specific subject area expertise, and they're all listed up there. I won't read them all for you, but they include some local partners. And then we have several folks on our staff. Myself, Linda Geltz, and Karen Kina are the 3 primary project team members, as well as our executive director, Joe McKinney, and Ron Townley, who's the director of our department. So I'll talk just briefly about our project process. This is the handout that you received, and just tries to kind of show you the steps that we're going through. So we're kind of in that blue and green phase of pulling together the existing data and plans, and we have a series of work groups that I'll talk about in just a moment on the different subjects, and they've been meeting and kind of analyzing the data that's available in those subject areas, and then they're going to be brought together to kind of cross their boundaries and get out of the silos that they typically work in as we proceed through the project. And you can see along the bottom, we're working on public engagement all throughout the process as well. So I mentioned that this process is conducted by a consortium, so I'll talk just a little bit about what the consortium is. I said previously it's a group of local governments, businesses, and others that have signed on to participate in the project. They're all listed on our website, and they essentially have formalized their participation in the process by signing a consortium agreement, and that just indicates that they're going to participate, and they're going to participate on the working groups and help to form the steering committee. Next slide. Those consortium members have the opportunity to help to shape the plan, to gain access to all these tools and models and data that we're developing. They can assist us with helping to ensure that a broad spectrum of our community has the chance to participate, and help us identify those funding opportunities, as well as receiving those extra sustainability points that I mentioned. Next slide. The responsibilities of the consortium members are to participate in the consortium and share information and look for implementation opportunities, but there's no requirement to implement anything that we identify. What we're hoping to develop is a tool that is useful for our local governments in moving forward in the future, but we don't have any regulatory authority, so we're not telling you what you have to do. Next slide. We're in the process of forming our steering committee, and this is just a diagram that kind of shows you how that steering committee is formed. There are representatives from the 5 counties, the city of Asheville, and then each of the work groups has a representative on the steering committee. If you'll go to the next slide, I'll show you those members. They're from across the region. So Mark Burrows from Transylvania County Economic Development Commission is our economic development representative. John Snover from AB Tech is from the Global Institute of Sustainable Technologies is the energy representative. Robert Ford from the Hot Springs Health Program is in our health work group. Cheryl Fortune is the housing director of WCCA, which is in Henderson County. She's representing the housing work group. Sue Anderson from the city of Hendersonville is representing land use. Lang Hornthal is our natural resources representative. He's a private business owner here in Buncombe County. Angie Chandler, the executive director of the Blue Ridge National Heritage Area, is our cultural resources representative. Mike Searles, who's a Haywood County commissioner and an RPO and MPO member, is the transportation work group representative. And then Tracy Kunkler, who's a consultant with Simpson Steel Consulting, who that group was mentioned earlier tonight in your meeting. She's representing the communications group. And then we have 3 at-large members. Stephanie Swepson Twitty, who's the president of Eagle Market Streets Development Corporation, Gwen Rukenbrod, who's the executive director of Handmade in America, and Gibby Harris from the Buncombe County Health Department. And then we also have local government representatives, and they're in the process of being identified, and they will also help to form that steering committee. The work groups are already working together, helping to identify some of the issues that are common across the region and try to look for some interconnected solutions. Next slide. We have a website if you want to get more information about the project. It's listed on the handouts that you received, but it's grow-wnc.org. And there's several ways that you can, a couple other ways you can stay informed if you want to go to the next slide. We're on Facebook and Twitter if you all are into social media. We have a few different things also on the website for getting involved, and that includes information about how to join our newsletter mailing list. Our consortium agreement is available there if the town wants to consider joining the consortium. We welcome participation in the work groups. All the meeting schedules are on the website. And we have a series of public meetings coming up in May. Our working title has been reality checks, but we kind of feel like that's a little bit of a negative connotation, so we're working on a new name, but that's going to happen throughout the month of May, and so we invite you to participate in that. But we also have a portable version of that's going to be on the website that can be conducted with small groups. That's what that host a meeting means, and there's a way to share your own story individually as well there. So I know that's a lot of information, but I'm happy to answer questions now or after the fact. If you go to the next slide, it has my contact information, or I guess it's the next one. But you can also just give Land to Sky a call, and they'll get you in touch with me too.
Do you have a copy of the consortium agreement?
that you could leave with us?
I
that
can
something-
email it to the clerk as soon as I get back to the office. It's also available on the website, and it just goes into more detail on some of those responsibilities that I mentioned. I'd be happy to send that to you guys, though.
What's the time frame on this?
Sure,
Is it
it's
a year, 2 years?
It's originally it's a 3-year project, but we've been underway for about a year with getting the consultant team in order and doing some of that stuff. So we have about a year to go on some of the real work of the work groups and some of the more public stuff that we're doing, and then the final year we think is going to be more on moving into implementation and really looking for those opportunities. So it's a total of 3 years, but we have about 2 years to go at this point.
Some specifics on the transportation analysis part. Just a question I have: Are you looking into parts of mass transportation, and if so, are you looking into different types of busing versus what we have today? And I say that because the fact that we have these buses from Asheville, and it works
Right.
semi-good. Problem is, so much of the money goes to the city of Asheville to pay them, of which we never can find out where the money goes to, other than the fact that it's overhead. And then secondly, the buses that they use are $400,000 buses, which you could easily use a $30,000 bus, put a $10,000 lift on it, and have the capacity to move people, including handicapped, and be able to have a lot more runs and serve a broader area.
Sure.
Are those some of the things that you're looking at?
Yes, the transportation group is definitely going to look at multimodal transportation, and so is going to look at things like transit. They are trying to make sure that as part of this process, they're able to update the transportation model that's used in our region, which helps guide the MPO and CDOT in making their decisions about kind of where funding goes. And so we're hoping that this process is a way that we can make sure that data is really up to date, because transportation models don't always guide us very well in making transit-related decisions. So we hope that we will be able to get at some of what you're talking about, which is how can we efficiently serve the population that would like to use transit, and how can we, build our transit resources and make sure that we're expanding those options. That's a really big part of what we're trying to talk about.
As we try to grow, I'm a builder myself, and of course it's been slow these past few years. And of course, with new housing coming online, we can utilize new techniques, better insulation, and reduce the cost of having to heat and cool a new structure. It's the old structures that really are the real energy hogs, whether it's summer or winter time, and that falls many times so much disproportionately upon the poor, who don't have the resources to go ahead and address those issues to make their houses or their mobile homes, because there's hundreds and hundreds of mobile homes that are so poorly insulated. Is that part of what you possibly may be looking into?
Yeah,
either from a housing side or from an energy reduction side?
Yeah, I would say that's really going to be looked at by both groups. I think the housing group is already having those kind of discussions. But one of the things we are going to do is, as I mentioned, kind of bring all those work groups together. That's going to happen in a June meeting, June or July, where we're going to convene all the work groups together and get them to kind of coalesce more around the goals and issues that they've identified than their subject area. So that if they're looking at, for example, reduction of energy use in housing, then that might bring together people from housing and energy and even transportation, because of course, transportation from housing to work is a big part of our energy use as well. So we definitely are trying to kind of look at those connections and identify some strategies that cut across the different subject areas to try to make a difference. And HUD, our funder, is very interested in ensuring that we reach underrepresented populations and those people of low wealth who are most impacted by these kinds of issues. So that's a big part of what we're trying to do as well.
Good.
Any other?
Sounds good. Should we wait, Mr. Mayor, till we get a copy of the agreement, and then we can bring it up the next meeting then to join?
I've heard several presentations on it. Carrie does a great job, and it's a good program.
Okay.
I think we need to be a part.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
The next item is the item we moved from consent agenda on approving the Lake Tomahawk project closeout. You want to address that, Michael?
Yes, I just want to make sure that the citizens are aware that as we're closing out these projects, just exactly what a incredible burden this has put up on the town, the citizens to have to pay for this. Lake Tomahawk stormwater management, of which if you've ever been over towards the golf course and been close to the croquet court, right behind the croquet court is a big hole. And that hole was supposed to end up collecting a lot of the stormwater that came off of the left side, the west side of, or south side of Spring Hill. Unfortunately, water never gets in there. So, I mean, we're paying almost $200,000 and will be for the next 15 years. 20 years. So you're looking at, right around 10, by the time you put interest on it, $15,000 a year for a project that basically they redid some of the parts of the golf course, went ahead on some of the slopes. They went ahead and graded them back a little bit and then reseeded them. They went ahead and put a new pipe underneath the bridge and a new bridge down at Lake Tomahawk, and then they built this hole. So I wanted you all to be aware of that, but I also wanted to ask our town attorney, do we have any leeway at all with McGill in the fact that this particular stormwater system does not work? I mean, can we go back to them to say, you designed this, we paid them $122,000?
If it's
Or is it too late?
Well, it's always, well, how long has that been? I know concept of time, but I think we're a little closer to that project than some of the older ones we're looking at, but it could be looked at, obviously. But any possibility of recovery would either be based on breach of contract or negligence, or failure. Negligence is a hard word to use, but the failure to design something that does what it's designed to do. But it can be looked at, obviously. But I can't answer the questions as whether you go anywhere we're looking at.
I'd just like to see if the rest of the board would be willing just to have, get with Al. I'd be more than happy to get with Al to question McGill about their scope of work presented that there was going to be a function from this hole to collect water to try to reduce flood, and it just doesn't work. It's probably, as they say, water over the dam, and it's probably not going to work. But if there is consensus, I'd like to get with Al and maybe have a meeting with McGill and Associates just to see if there's anything that can be done. It may just be upstream somewhere that they just simply don't have the right connections.
Wasn't that termed a silt pond?
Silt pond, yeah.
Silt pond.
Any other comments? Is there consensus of the board to have Al arrange a meeting with McGill and Associates to discuss this issue? Anyone object to that? Not Al, would you go ahead and say that?
I'll do it.
Do we have a motion to close the grant out?
Do we need to close it out?
Probably does, it's got federal funds in it. I don't know.
Is there a problem in not closing it out until we get this, until we have a meeting?
I think if you want to leave it open a couple more months, it doesn't.
I don't think I heard anything.
I'd like let's just.
We're already making payments on it, aren't we?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Something here we've not heard anything about. Boundary line agreement between Town of Black Mountain and the Swanville Valley Historical Preservation Association. Mr. Wendell Begley and Mr. Bill Hammond.
Thank you, Carl. Yeah, this project has been a long time coming, almost not quite as old as the building. And you all gain a little bit of property with regard to the resolution, not much, but a very little amount. What I'd like to do tonight, and my name is Wendell Begley, and I'm the chairman of the Buncombe
Oh, habits hard to break.
Yeah, almost 4 years. I'm chairman of the Swanno Valley Museum, and would like to talk very briefly about what we're here tonight about. And I would ask that, because we've been waiting a long time for this, as many of you all know, I'd ask that our members, Ann Chesky, our director, John, our architect, and our construction committee, if they would stand, just so folks can see those that have been involved in this project for some time. All uncontroversial people. I'm going to make a few brief remarks tonight, this evening, about why we're here. And it does have to do with something that I think we have a great passion for, especially those of us that are natives, and I think very much importantly, those folks that have come here to our valley as newcomers. And I always end up telling folks when I make that comment, don't forget we ran the Cherokees out. So we're all newcomers to some degree. What we're about is expanding the old fire department building, which was built in 1921. And the architect was Richard Sharp Smith, who was the supervising architect for the Biltmore House. Most of that time, I would say 70%, from then till now, was used as a fire department. I think the fellows up there had one bathroom and there were 8 bunks. And it was a pretty tight operation. It's a very tight operation for the museum. We've got about 3,000 square feet. To give you some idea of what has taken place with regard to the museum since in 1988, our founders of the museum, which you all graciously gave us the building, we got a deed in 2000, but Harold Patton, Bill McMurray, Harriet Stiles, and Tom Reynolds were the founders of the museum in 1988. We didn't actually hire a full-time administrator and get organized with laws and regulations and all those other things that come about until around 2001. We have grown, and this is very important, and it relates to what we're here tonight asking about with regard to the facility. We have grown in that period of 15 years approximately from 35 donors to over 600 members in membership, which makes us the largest membership entity in the Swanno Valley. And it is a good bit of our income is generated from that. And by the way, we are very solvent. We have about $40,000 backup to our operating budget and about $129,000 in funds set aside for our building. And that's, again, what we're about tonight is a fundraising campaign. I would end up and close with giving you all a couple of minutes of personal rendition. I've been at the bank now starting 40 years, and I've probably heard everything that's been of controversy. It's been good about the town. It's been bad about the town. It all makes up our history. And fortunately, my ancestors went back to the very beginning when folks came into the valley. So what I haven't learned on my own has been handed down by my dad, who was a justice of the peace here in town, writing warrants, getting us out of bed at the middle of the night when we were young kids. And to remember some of those folks that had warrants written and warrants taken out and that type of thing. Black Mountain is a very colorful history. And I'm not telling any of you folks that are here and the difference. The thing that I have witnessed down there at the bank over a period of years of dealing with people, and we've got about 1,400 count holders. When I started back in the 70s, there was a feeling in town of newcomers coming in and wanting to change everything. And the thought was, well, we did it this way back home, we need to be doing it here. Now, you know, us mountain people always felt we had a better way. But we heard that remark came to me so many times with people coming in looking for property. I would tell you what the museum has done to make that different, and I don't hear that. I would tell you in the last 10 to 15, well, last 10 years, I don't hear that comment anymore. And what the museum, I think, has done with its membership and with its diversity of folks of the philosophy of conservative and the folks of the more liberal philosophy, is we have said one of our corollaries of operation is bringing history to life. And we will take on any given month 60 to 80 people out on vacations or hikes or whatever to see our history, to actually see where our history has been and where it's gone, and some of us tell how we've made that progress. What has happened is there's become a much more greater appreciation in our community for what we have. And the folks that come here, and again, this is a thing that goes in cycles, but the folks that are coming here now are very proud of that fact, very proud of our heritage, very proud of our tradition, and want to do all they can to preserve it. And that, in a nutshell, tells you what the museum is about, is protecting, preserving that history that we can pass down to generations to come. Unfortunately, we didn't do a real good job of that. There's only about 3 books out there that can give you a little flavor of what's happened. And I would close with this, and I think it's very applicable, and I've used it a number of times in talking to folks about the museum. Many of y'all know our beloved Arthur Joe Hemphill, who passed away a few years ago. Several years ago, probably 8 to 10 years ago, a TV crew from WBTV in Charlotte had gotten up with Joe, and because the Catawba River starts here and runs down east, had asked Joe, since he owned most of the property, he'd be glad to tell you that if you're here today, runs through his property. They asked him if he would take them up to the headwaters. And Arthur Joe called me and asked if I'd tag along with him. We went up there. They had a full film crew that took in cameras and everything. And after getting Joe to begin, well, he got loosened up in walking about 2 miles, but in getting Arthur Joe to make some statements for the camera right there at the headwaters, the very spring that gives birth to the Catawba River, they asked him about his ownership of all this land. And I'll never forget this. This was the remark Joe made, Arthur Joe made. He said, yes, I do own all this land, but I'm really not an owner. I'm a caretaker for a period of time. And that is really applicable. Arthur Joe was not an environmentalist. He was a strong conservationist, and he felt that in his heart. That is what the museum is hoping to do and has done, and hopefully with the approval of our plans tonight will do for our valley. And we hope we can do and carry on that legacy that Arthur Joe left. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Bill Hamby. I'm chairman of the construction committee for the museum, and also a member of the board. And I can't give you a Black Mountain address because I live in Swannanoa. 20 Herschel Lane in Swannanoa, but that's part of the entire Swannanoa Valley. Swannanoa Valley starts, everybody know where it starts? Gudger's Bridge there in Azalea, and goes the head of Ridgecrest. I believe 11 miles, some last number I saw, some 30,000 residents involved in the Swannanoa Valley, live in the Swannanoa Valley. Isn't it amazing, the valley? It's just amazing, a blessing to be able to live and work here. I've been fortunate. I used to be able to give you an address in Black Mountain, grew up in Black Mountain, was able to attend college, come back, and Wendell's already mentioned the Buncombe County Board of Education. I spent 30 and a half years, and we go back a while working for the Board of Education. Been able to retire now and try to give back to the community. Our original project, we started with back in 2008 with the original proceeds for the museum, with a project of restoring and maintaining the existing building that the town deeded back in 2000. And we were able to do that with the services of our original architect, Steve Farrell, and Sutton and Kennelly, led by Zeb Wells, to maintain and restore the original fire department, which is now, of course, the museum since the beginning. And what that allowed us to do is to provide the exterior and structural upgrades necessary to maintain that building. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that in that endeavor, particularly with phase, what we call phase 1B, that was the restoration or the rebuilding of the what's now the best looking door in the town of Black Mountain. And that was under the auspices of Hewing and McConaughey, our local contractor, who hired Mike Roberts, a local cabinet maker and furniture builder, who, by the way, actually restores the front of that at the beginning of our fall, our spring season, and he just did that at the end of March. So that particular phase 1A and B got us to where we are today, and as far as the structure of our building. We have gone through, just as has already been mentioned, the problems as it relates to the economic downturn, and we pretty much were at a standstill as far as proceeding on with the project. And then that same economic downturn resulted in our first architect having to close shop, so we were in the process. We needed to undertake hiring a new architect. We went through our architect selection process at the beginning of last year, and once that was concluded, John Fisher with Fisher Architects out of Asheville was selected by our construction committee and our board. And since that time, he's been on board and been quite involved. I can tell you that the plans that are in your packet tonight is actually the 11th version of the plans that he brought to our construction committee. It seemed like all we were doing last year, particularly the beginning of last year, was meeting with the architect. But that's okay, because it generated a project that we are quite excited about. He has taken a fresh new look to what we had from our original architect, and I can tell you that as an end result, we have a project now that is not as originally designed, building in the alleyway and building a three-story building in the back. He's now has proposed, and the construction committee has approved, and the board has approved, basically building in the same footprint of the existing building, the existing block building that was built in the back. We understand was mostly an in-house project by the firemen at the time based on the need they had. And with the exception of adding 6 feet 2 inches to the back of that building, or in effect taking up parking space that we have been using, we're basically would be building a 2-story addition in the back in that same footprint of the existing block building, and of course renovating the entire 1921 building. What's exciting about that is that the entire, both floors of the original building would be turned into gallery space. And then in the back building on the first floor, we would have actually a connecting building that he'll explain to you, and then a gallery space on the top floor. So we have, in effect, been able to, through his leadership and expertise and the expertise of the construction committee, all of which have prior experience in this line of work, have been able to reduce our estimated cost by right at 50%, but we've only lost right about 20% of the original plan that dated back to 2004. We've only lost about 20% of the square footage. And what's key, as far as I'm concerned, is we've only lost 130 square feet in gallery space. So it's quite impressive. So let me just get back to the first item on the agenda to see if you have any questions about that, and then I'll ask him to actually present the plan. And that was one of the first things he pointed out to us is that we needed a clarification of the adjoining survey line that adjoins the common wall space of our building and the Arts Center building. We didn't have a good survey at the time. We didn't have a correct survey to adequately describe that, in effect, the same footprint. So that's the purpose of the purpose of the boundary line agreement and the new survey was, in effect, to clarify that common wall space and that adjoining property line space. And as has already been mentioned to you, the town picks up 0.003 acres in this whole process, but makes it legal if we, in fact, are tearing down the block addition and building in the exact footprint of that block addition. It clarifies that point. Any questions or concerns related to that first item on the agenda? Okay. Let me introduce to you John Fisher, Fisher Architects, who has developed this plan for you, and just a minute to set up a board, an easel and some boards.
I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight and to speak with you. You've gotten your packets. What I wanted to do tonight is to really kind of give you some of the background and the reasons why we chose to proceed with the design the way we did and some of the strategies behind that. As you look at this board, the green area is the historic Richard Sharp Smith building, which is really a jewel of a building. And our approach to the project was to really honor that building by creating a very distinct differentiation between it and the new addition. And by not building in the alley, we were able to preserve the entire facade on the alley. And when we really studied the project, the alley is just such a wonderful space, and that one of the keys of what we were looking for, obviously, is we're in a different economic range now, and we looked at the project with fresh eyes from two or three different perspectives. First one being, are there cost centers in the alley or cost centers in the project that we can really focus in on and save money by doing things more efficiently? And also, we looked at the square footage, and are there areas where we can provide two functions in one space and save some square footage. Obviously, the exhibit space or the gallery space we felt and the museum felt was the most important space, so we've tried to preserve as much of that as we could. By not building in the alley, that was some of the more expensive space to build in, and also the connections and the amount of square footage that you would gain there was minimal. And if we could find a way to incorporate that square footage and that, which was primarily used as circulation space, into the main body of the building, then we had a much more efficient structure to work with. So in doing that, again, we've really created a situation where the existing historic building is preserved, and we felt like that was an important space, so we basically used both floors of that space for gallery space and moved all of the service areas, the bathrooms, the lift and office space and all those things out of that bathroom into the new addition so that we could really honor and help people really see what a wonderful structure that is. And then this is the first floor, so we have our office space on it. We have a multi-use room in the back, which will serve for board meetings. It'll be a flexible space for workshops and work areas and so forth. And then on the second floor, we have a new gallery space. How that really works out is, this is a drawing of the existing first floor of the art museum. One of the things we incorporated into it is a very open stair to really lead you up into the second floor. Right now there's a very tight enclosed wood stair. And One of the improvements that we need to make in the existing building is to provide some additional loading for the second floor space to allow it to be an assembly floor loading. So we're adding a very light steel superstructure within the building. One of the things you'll notice is that the walls in the interior are brick. It's an interesting building. You don't see them like that anymore, so we really wanted to highlight it. It's really 3 wipes of brick. The entire wall is solid brick. And so we're pulling that surface off and really exposing that brick, allowing those windows on the alley side to bring natural light into the gallery, and then we're polishing the concrete floor to really bring back that sense of the old fire station. As you move up that stair, you come into the second floor. Right now, it has an old 2x4 acoustic ceiling and 2x4 fluorescent lights. In crawling around in the attic with Bill, he pointed out there's some absolutely wonderful old trusses up in there that were made as primary support for the roof. And so we're pulling out those old ceilings and exposing those trusses and building the actual insulated ceiling up above that. And this is a little doorway, which is actually a handicap lift, so we are providing handicap access throughout the building through a lift system. And as you're in the second floor gallery, you have this opening here that really opens you up to see the new gallery with this wonderful window at the end of the building. The drawing here is a section drawing, as if you took a knife and cut the building and broke it open right against the alley wall. So you see the stair and the existing building coming up and the 2 gallery spaces that are completely open. This is a little transition area that we're really transitioning between the historic building and the new addition. So that serves as a transition space. And then you can see this is the office space here. This is the new gallery with some skylights, and then the stair that brings you back down into the historic portion of the building again. The exterior of the building, again, we're preserving the historic building. We're creating this transition zone with this sort of service area with the bathrooms and so forth in it. And then this is the new gallery addition that's at the back. And one thing I want you to notice here is we've kept the proportions of the new building really to reflect that of the existing building, so that it really is a very sympathetic addition to the structure. And again, having this wonderful window with some great views to the mountains. This is the alley with the Drippolator building here, and then this is the art center next door. The exterior materials is a composite rain screen system, is the gray, and then this is a cast stone or a limestone product to form the base, which works well with the existing brick of the facade. The roof of the new addition will be a metal roof, turned metal roof. I'm welcome to ask any questions you have.
Just one technical question there. The lift, I know you all had different problems with the, or situations with your next door neighbor there. And so was this a way to get around not being able to utilize their elevator?
No, in the end, Mike, it really was complying with the town's current regulations with regard to building, and in working with Dan with regard to that, that's what we had to comply with. So in the end, it was a result of building requirements.
Okay. And then you're talking about that on the outside there, the limestone part on the bottom. I just think that if there's any way at all to try to utilize some type of a relief like they have down at that pottery building, where they have gone ahead and utilized that concrete on the outside, that if you could come with some scene from 100 years ago, 200 years ago, that could be put on that part of it would really, I think, really accentuate that and give it a little more character than what it is. Just as an observation, just observation.
Mr. Mayor, members of the board, just for clarification, we're not here asking for any money, but we have deed requirements. The original deed back in September 20th, 2000 says whatever the museum does as it relates to major changes and modifications, additions, and so forth, requires your approval. So in order for us to actually have what we call a sellable project, then we need your approval of these plans. They then go to the Historical Commission, which we have tentatively scheduled for May the 2nd now. I've been informed, so there may be some changes, i.e. The type of thing you're talking about, Mike, on the base, depending on how these plans fit in with their interpretation. But we just need your consensus, and then we'll proceed.
Okay.
Approval.
Is there a motion to adopt the boundary line agreement between the town of Black Mountain, whose address is 160 Midland Avenue, Black Mountain, and the Swannanoa Valley Historical and Preservation Association, whose address is P.O. Box 306, Black Mountain. Also to approve the attached schematic design plans dated March 15, 2012, as prepared by Fisher Architects. Sure. There's a motion for that? Yes. In discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Well, thank you, especially for all you guys do. How many on the board are a member of the Museum Association that have a membership? Gail, I'll challenge them all to buy a minimum $100 membership by Friday. And you put a letter in the newspaper next week thanking those that paid by Friday. Thank you, y'all. Great job.
Good job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Park attendant for Recreation Department, Al.
Yes, sir. I am asking the board tonight to approve a recommendation to hire a part-time position to cover weekends and holidays at the Town of Black Mountain Recreational Facilities at a cost of $6,250. Justification for this, and Casey Connor and Jamie Matthews brought this to me, and we discussed it. I think it's a great idea because we're using comp time hours of public services employees that are building at a very, very rapid rate as we move into the summer season, or will be accumulating at a very rapid rate. We believe that initially we can save about $11,000 doing this. We believe that without doing this, we're probably headed toward having to possibly hire another employee in the Public Services Department. There would be a cost of about $30,000 a year, including benefits, total package. So we feel that by doing this, it's going to save the town a significant amount of money. And we just feel like it's a prudent thing to do. This position will report to Casey Connor in Recreation, which I think will work well with him working with the individual if approved.
Is there a motion to approve recommendation to hire a part-time position to cover weekends and holidays with all recreation facilities at a cost of $6,250 per year?
I so move.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next item is town attorney.
I actually get to see something this month, Mayor. Have 3 items just to update the board on. One, since there was a vote after the agenda meeting, I'd like to announce that the town has finally employed a lawyer to pursue the settings bonds. That will be Bill Cannon of Waynesville. That the employment agreement, since that project that is being paid by both the town and the Settings Homeowners Association, the Settings has approved that contract. They'll be signing in the morning. We'll be moving forward with him. Second issue came up in the last month or two are the water meter reading devices, the radio read devices that have been a failure. I was asked to look into whether or not we could go to the company and try to recover some of that money. There's some possibility there, but I'm still gathering information to see if under the warranty we still don't have a leg up. Third issue, Richard Hudson raised as a matter of public comment last meeting about the handling of funds by the Golf Course Management Committee in light of the statute that requires that basically our finance director have his finger in some fashion on every penny that comes and goes. I read those statutes. Appears that Mr. Hudson was correct. Finally got word back from Karen Malonzi this morning that in fact Mr. Hudson was correct. And I know the second question is, for those who are hotly opposed to the management committee, is it a basis for terminating the contract? The contract has a severability provision. That's a provision of the contract says if some part of this contract cannot work the way it says, it doesn't void the rest of the contract. However, it will dictate that we look closer and rearrange how the funds coming and going at the golf course are handled. I've looked, from what little I know, it's not a big change in how the money is handled, but who has supervision over how the money is handled. And that's the news for this week.
Would you get with Dean and work that out with the proposed plan back to us?
Very well.
So we'll have that for the next meeting, and then we can vote on that, or is that just something that?
I think we need to approve it.
I think we'll
I'd like to be able to vote on it.
Because it's going to basically be, it's a change of the term of that contract, so I think this board will need to address it, yes.
Okay, very good.
Okay, anything else? Ron, nothing else?
That's all.
That's all. Al?
Yes, sir. Real happy to announce tonight in our Public Services Department, I want to recognize Jamie Matthews and Mark White. Been working on reorganization. Reorganization is probably not a good term at all. We're using our people, and we should be. But anyway, Jamie has been our interim Public Works Director for some time. I'm proud to announce tonight he is no longer interim. We take that interim away. He is our Public Works Director. And also that Mark White is Director of Water Quality for us. Now, this doesn't mean that I'm splitting the department up. I love the cross-training that we're doing. We're going to continue to be doing that. But these guys are going to be working together hand in glove to make this department work as efficiently as it possibly can be. Also, we have posted now for a operations manager. That's in the works, and they will be making that selection in the very, very near future. And then from that, we will have 2 crew chiefs, and that's not different from what we've had in the past. I guess we kind of got away from that, maybe at a point, but we'll be going back to that. And the other piece of this puzzle that we talked about is water certification. Mark White is our only guy on staff that we're required for the state of North Carolina to have B well operator certified on staff, as well as a B distribution certified person on staff. He's the only one we have right now, so what we're putting in place is a 2-year plan, and the reason I say 2-year is simply because that once you get your C well, you have to hold that for a year before you can sit for the B well exam or B distribution exam. So it's going to be a 2-year plan to get someone else in our department to get that certification, with a 4-year, a little bit longer term plan to get a second person to get that certification, realizing that Mark White, we don't want him to leave us, but he's eligible for retirement. Looks awful young to be, but he is, in 4 years. So that's our plans in the Public Services Department, but I recognize these guys tonight. I tell you now, they're doing a great job for us, and I think we're right where we need to be.
ABC Board,
ABC Board, just a brief update on that. I have decided, you folks gave me the assignment to pick a mediator. I have decided on Judge Cash. He'll be doing that for us. We do have a little glitch in that Mary Sneed has got some surgery coming up. She thought, I'm in contact with her, and she thought that this was gonna get scheduled for last Friday. It did not. This has gotten a little more involved than what she thought. So she has changed surgeons and will be meeting with the new surgeon. This probably will get scheduled a week from Wednesday. She's gonna keep me updated on that, but she tells me that she's just not physically able right now to do this. So that's kind of where we are, and she's telling me that also her recuperation time is probably gonna be about 8 weeks. But I'll keep you posted on where we are.
Thank you. Any communications from the Board of Aldermen?
Yes, I'd like to say something. I'm just about bursting with energy and excitement over the type meeting we've had tonight. I think it's been very good. And one thing I want to point out about our Town Square Committee, our Museum Committee, and our new upstart Debt Reduction Committee, I want to emphasize, I don't see these as competitive teams. I see us all on one team, working together. And just as the mayor challenged us to get on board and help the museum out, I would like to encourage all the citizens of the town and the valley to join up with 1, 2, or 3 of these endeavors. What an exciting time for our town. I am so proud to be here, and this is why I'm sitting here. People ask me, why did you do this? This is why I'm so thrilled. Thank you so much for all your hard work.
Anyone else?
This is, I want to mention about the golf course.
Yes, if you have comments.
Yeah, on the golf course, at the agenda meeting, I mentioned about how that some of the things that are not being done very well. Number one being croquet court. Croquet court looks like it'd probably be better if we put a big drape around it. And that is part of the management agreement, was to take care of the croquet court. They have not done so. And so I don't know how we need to go about this, but just thinking out loud here. Maggie, do you think we need to set up a committee to overlook this golf course like once every quarter or something? I'm not saying we got to decide tonight, but these are things, and just like the golf course, that's the second issue. These golf carts are not being taken care of very well.
I thought that was the Parks and Rec Committee. Weren't they supposed to be?
John DeWitt is here. He
Yeah.
probably can give us a report on some of this.
I
John,
don't
you
know
want
if
to
we
come up?
already have one that could do this. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, I sent you a report this on the golf course, and let me answer some of the questions and concerns. I've been spend some time with the golf course. On the croquet court itself, they are going to totally dig it up, but the weather has to be really hot in order to plant the type of champion Bermuda grass. So as soon as the weather gets hot enough with the temperature, they're going to dig it all up and sprig in that grass, and then once it starts growing, they'll be cutting it 3 times a week and maintaining it, and that's been the holdup. They've spent most of their energy right now getting the golf course into the best shape it's ever been in many years, as those of you who've been out there lately. So they are taking the care of it, and that's what they're waiting for, is the temperature to get hot enough.
John, does anybody use that court?
There have been very few people out there, but like Alderman Sobel said, it is in terrible condition. It's not, it's a nice horse track, I think it looks like right now. So, but they can't do anything until the temperature gets high enough to plant that grass. That grass has to be planted. We've had some questions about the rough, the area in that. What they've been trying to do is to make it look more like a professional course, in which it looks, as opposed to just one big cow pasture, it sort of has a pathway leading towards the green. So now they're cutting the fairways much shorter with the rough on the sides, which you're not supposed to hit the ball into. You're supposed to try to stay in the fairway. But it's, so they've had the higher grass outside of the fairways are intended to play, the roughs are mowed higher and are more, serve more as a penalty to the errant golf shots. The rough is thicker in spots than in years past. It is cut at 1 3/4 of an inch except for the last week when they had to really stop cutting grass in order to get the greens aerated. So that's why for the last couple days it had a problem. As some of you know, I was out there this morning. It has been cut back, and they're going to maintain the 1 3/4 inches. And it just happened for the last couple days when they were trying to get the greens back into the shape they were. The rough is thicker in spots than in years past. The staff is working to define the cut between the fairway and the rough in 2012. This should result in a more aesthetically pleasing look, which is really a more defined shape in terms of the fairway itself and the playability of the grounds. Rough that is cut higher is usually healthier and has fewer weeds, which has been a concern in the past, so that'll help with that. And I was checking historically, and it seems like the rough was at about 2.5 inches previously with Mr. Hall when he was there, so they are cutting it lower. But it is there for a purpose, you know. It really helps you focus in where you're going and to try to stay out of the rough, right? Ms. Tuttle?
It slows play up.
It slows the play.
Oh, it really does.
Big time. It does slow.
And you can actually lose.
It cuts your
Lose balls in there too, especially
It was
like on
like
15.
trying to find Easter eggs.
Well, good golfers use Titleist. And Saturday I found 3 brand new Titleists. So the good golfers are having some hard times out there too.
So the rough height is being monitored, but it's really making the course look good. In terms of the golf carts, it is in the budget for 2012, 2013. By Christmas, they're looking at replacing all those. They realize that they're being maintained to the best of their ability. It is in the budget for the 2012, 2013, so they will be replaced also. They're on their 8th year, and as you know, they last about 4 or 5 years, so it is in the budget to be replaced. So I think the comments I heard this morning, I was there for quite a few times, I'd say 80% of the people are very pleased. People are changing their membership from the $199, which ends at the end of this month, and they're changing it to the $500, $600, and $700 ones. People were doing it this morning while I was standing there. So I think the comments I've heard, and then I went upstairs and looked at the restaurant, and my understanding from the people I've talked to in the article in the paper this week, the service and the food is phenomenal. The lady there is doing a nice job, and people are real pleased with the atmosphere up in the lounge. So I think we're moving. We still have a ways to go, but considering where we were last year to where we are now, it's getting where we want it to be. I think you'll be proud of it. Yeah.
When you begin to look at the fairways, and it does look better, but the biggest thing is play. And one of the things that Billy Casper people have said is that they're going to increase play, and you can't increase play if you're slowing down play. So having a higher rough, and I'd have to take issue on the fact of whether or not this rough is literally, there is more rough out there now than there has been in the past.
And I think
and there may be some places where it was 2 inches or higher, but that was the exception, not the rule. And the 1 3/4 now has become the rule.
It is the rule now.
And that's fine if you're playing at the Masters, but this is not the Masters, and most of the people that play here are not going to be playing at the Masters. So I think that you know, you need to be listening to some of the people who have been contacting me also that say play is slow. Secondly, with regards to the golf carts, you can, I mean, a golf cart may last 4 years. You could have it last 2 years. Or if you had some people that were taking good care of them, they may be like that lady on NPR that's driving that Comet that went ahead and lasted for 574,000 miles. But it takes maintenance, regular maintenance. And that's something that the carts are not getting now. Because it's a direct expense to the town to have to replace the carts. We know we're going to have to replace them. But to stretch the life of those carts out another year or two is possible if we had folks in there working on those carts like we had in the past, like John White, Kim Latta. Kim has said that he would maintain the carts for a membership and then for a cart. And he would take care of the carts. And that's been turned down. So I'm challenging you, if you would please get with Billy Casper, since you folks seem to be the ones that are in contact with them, and ask them if that's not possible for them to let Kim Latta, who has worked on these carts.
Kim Latta? Latta. Okay.
for the cost of a membership and using the cart whenever he does play, that he will maintain those carts. There's also been several flat tires, and part of that is because they're not replacing the tires. So I just hope that you would look at those, please.
I will look at it, and I will report back to you, sir.
Thank you, John.
Okay?
Well, to follow up on what Alderman Sobel's referring to, at the agenda meeting, I took all of that, what he was saying, to heart. And I contacted the folks at Billy Casper, Mr. Bednar, and sent him an email and requested a response, in direct response to those questions that Mr. Sobel put out. And what he has sent back to me, and I'll be glad to share this with all the folks when I return the email, but said golf carts are checked for safety daily. Maintenance and repair of the carts is completed by a mechanic at least twice a month, and any repairs are logged. Every cart is cleaned after use. During the off-season, it's completed by Brent and a small team of cart attendants. During the peak season, cart attendants are staffed daily to address this need. And as Dr. DeWitt just referred to about the golf carts during the 8th year. We talk about use, and I guess everyone got the report that came from Brent. Everybody by a mechanic at least twice a month, and any repairs are logged. Commission? And in it, he says that February was better than we could have expected. The weather was perfect. We only had 4 days throughout the entire month that were completely unplayable. We turned 1,121 rounds and were budgeted for 130. That is an improvement, impressive considering we turned 0 rounds in the month of February in 2011. Due to the high number of rounds we turned, we were able to top our budget by 149%. February went a long ways towards reducing a negative EBITDA, EBITDAR. Any idea what that is? Golfers?
Earnings before
What?
tax.
EBITDAR number, some kind of number. Anyway.
That's earnings before your interest, your taxes, depreciation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. March has started off strong as well. We are projected to turn 1,852 rounds for the month and are budgeted for only 886. We're projecting to bring in $38,450 in revenue and are budgeted for $25,436. He discussed about the 19th hole being open and the food service and beverage. I think they're doing beer and wine up there now.
I think so.
Okay. And just talk real impressive about the golf course and how things are going. I visited with Brent a couple of weeks ago, and we had decided we're gonna come up with some kind of little card that the golfers can fill out after they play golf. And they can kind of rate the course, rate the service, rate the staff on how well they enjoyed that play that day. And I think that will give us a real good idea as to, how folks are really kind of enjoying themselves or not. And maybe that'll cut back on, we getting calls. And one person's saying over here that the place is falling apart, it's not doing any good. And somebody call over here and say, you're doing a great job, keep up the good work. So, maybe Mr. Sobel's right. Maybe we need to have some kind of a little committee or something that can kind of help golfers.
Earnings before tax.
EBITDAR number, some kind of number. Anyway.
That's earnings before your interest, your taxes, depreciation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I think what would help us all, if we saw a profit and loss statement instead of just rounds, that, the bottom line is what we're all interested in.
Mayor, can I add to that topic? I should have reported on this under my communications. I didn't have it down, but I should have talked about it. After our agenda meeting on Thursday, I have been in contact with them, and I've got a conference call set up between myself, Nick Bednar, now he's regional manager out of Ohio, and Brian Lovejoy is regional manager out of Tennessee. So I got a conference call set up with those guys tomorrow to talk about the things we've talked about. And one thing that wasn't talked about tonight is the moving of the pro shop. I think that's probably the #1 issue that I hear, a possibility of moving the pro shop back where it was. a concern, I hadn't heard this before, a concern that I have, that John mentioned, Bermuda grass on the croquet court. I've got concerns about that. They had talked about doing some Bermuda grass on the course, and I talked to them. They kind of backed away from that because of the climate. In our area, it stays dormant so much of the year. I don't know that that's a good idea, the Bermuda. But anyway, we'll be talking about the croquet court and all the things we've talked about.
Well, I certainly hope that you emphasize what Maggie was talking about the moving the pro shop.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the gentleman from Billy Casper referred to the people working at the 19th hole, that they have visibility of people coming off the 18th, and then they could go. Well, they're not involved in that. They don't know who's paid and who hasn't paid.
They're not in the mix at all. No.
And also, too, it would certainly help with just the flow of the golf carts, because, I mean, that's where the golf carts are stored.
Tremendous amount of work.
There's no need to bring them down the
Get those
hill.
things
If
up
they
and
just
down.
want to do that for the months of December, January, February, fine, then let them move it down there. But for the good months like we have now, and again, they are the management team, you know, we decide.
Yeah.
We decide. So hopefully they will move on their own to do this without us having to
That's
come back
the
here and take a
approach
boat and tell them to do it.
With your approval, that's the approach I'm going to take. I think that, things like that, I think that is up to the board, in my opinion, versus the management company. I think that's more board decision.
Okay. Anything else?
Mr. Mayor. Two things. First thing is, it came to my attention a couple of weeks ago that the Asheville Tribune, one of the local papers, they ran I guess Asheville Citizen Times used to do it too, where they would list all the property tax delinquents in the county. And it was very interesting. I went back to the Buncombe County Tax website, and I pulled up specifically Black Mountain. And Dean, I don't know where we are as far as, I guess, collections go for 2011, but it was really interesting to me to see the amount of taxes that are still floating around out there for Buncombe County. And not only is it Buncombe County taxes that figured in that, I guess it would be Black Mountain taxes and vehicle taxes and what have you. It's kind of looped together, I would imagine.
Yeah, I just looked at property taxes today, and that's about 3.3 million that Black Mountain receives. They only have about $80,000 left.
But that list, it went from people owing maybe $8.50 to someone owing like, I think it was almost $20,000 in Buncombe County property taxes. And what was even disturbing more to me is that this board sits here as an example to our citizens and making the efforts to do things. And there are people on this board that if you go and look, folks, who haven't paid their taxes yet. And to me, that's very discouraging. That's very discouraging. I think it's important for us as a town, when we start talking taxes and talking about reduction in taxes and, you know, additional taxes or whatever, that we all toe the line here. We're all responsible for what happens in town. So I think it's very important that we do that. My second issue was, a couple of weeks ago, we stood out on that corner, Montreat Road and Highway 70. It was kind of overcast day, and we were out there picking up shovels and getting ready to break ground. And well, a couple of things really encouraged me that day, and I'm going to kind of build on what Maggie said here about this board working together. That the gentleman was there, and he had a shovel in his hand, and he has always been very outspoken about that piece of property. He's always said we needed to sell it, we needed to sell it. But Mr. Reagan was right out there with us breaking ground. And Tim, I think that says a lot of your commitment and wanting to accept what the majority says and move on. The other thing that really impressed me was what the mayor said in his speech. And that if we think back to it, we look at Lake Tomahawk. Lake Tomahawk at one time was just a mud hole there. But look at what it is now, because of what people came together and supported the effort that was made by citizens for the good of everything and everyone. I was encouraged by that because I took that to place that in the concept of the golf course. It's there. Let's work together to make this happen. Let's work together to make this something that's gonna benefit all of us. I think it can, and I think it will. The golf course will be a showplace. These gentlemen presented an excellent plan tonight to make an improvement to the Swanville Valley Museum. That's gonna be a showplace. This corner lot here, the town is gonna be a showplace. But it won't happen unless we all work together, and that's the main thing. Thank you. I'm talking to Mr. McMurray. He's here this evening.
Okay.
Any other comments? Citizen comments. Elaine?
I'm surprised. Oh, Elaine Lotzenheiser, 410 Avena Road. Mr. Showers, the gentleman who attended your town meeting last week, was it? Week before last? And without any solicitation, told what a good game of golf. He said how much better it is now than it was 2 years ago. And we didn't even ask him to say that. He said it on his own. He said he's been playing here for what, 4 years? He moved here 4 years ago? And he said in the last 2 years, or 2 years ago, that it was terrible. But right now, he said it's as good a course as he could play anywhere in this county. And by the way, Mike, the Masters champion yesterday ended up in the rough. Do you remember that before he won the tournament?
That was in a pine straw rough, not a hay field. Thank you.
In the pine straw.
I didn't know you were a golfer, Elaine.
I don't play, I just watch.
Anything else? There being nothing else, Phil, I'm gonna give you 1 minute.
Can I ask, maybe you make a decision tonight perhaps on joining Grow Western North Carolina?
I think we will, but we want to see the agreement prior to. I think that's asking the board to do something that's.
Will you give me some direction? Should I be the one attending all these meetings, or will you assign somebody also to attend the meetings?
Well, I'll be disappointed if someone from the board doesn't also attend the meetings.
Thank you.
I know I certainly will be willing to. There be nothing else, if there's no objection, I'm going to declare us adjourned.